My best friend bet I couldn't win over her tough sister. What happened next shocked us both. Some bets cost $20, some cost your pride, and some quietly changed the direction of your entire life. The summer I accepted a ridiculous challenge from my best friend. I thought I was trying to prove a point. I had no idea I was walking toward the most painful, beautiful, and unforgettable chapter of my life. By the time everything was over, the bet didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the promise I made to someone who had forgotten how to trust anyone again. Before we begin, if you believe kindness can heal broken hearts and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that stay with you long after they're over. My name is Nathan, and I grew up in the quiet town of Franklin, Tennessee, where everyone seemed to know everyone else's business. My best friend Mason had been part of my life since elementary school. We had survived awkward teenage years, terrible jobs, heartbreaks, and countless adventures together. Mason was outgoing, fearless, and always ready to laugh. His older sister, however, was the complete opposite. Her name was Hannah. Around town, she had a reputation for being impossible to impress. People described her as cold, stubborn, intimidating, and completely uninterested in relationships. She rarely smiled, avoided parties, and politely ended conversations before they became personal. Some believed she thought she was better than everyone else. Others assumed she simply hated people. One evening, while we were attending a neighborhood barbecue filled with music, grilled burgers, and families enjoying the warm Tennessee sunset, Mason laughed after noticing me watching Hannah help an elderly neighbor carry heavy trays of food without saying a word. He teased me relentlessly and finally threw out a challenge. He bet that I couldn't get Hannah to say yes to a single date before summer ended. Everyone nearby laughed. At first, I refused. Dating someone's sister sounded like the quickest way to ruin a lifelong friendship. But Mason kept insisting that there was absolutely no chance I could even get her to smile, let alone spend time with me. Eventually, pride got the better of me. I accepted. The next morning, I decided I wouldn't use cheesy pickup lines or fake confidence. Instead, I simply started saying hello whenever I saw Hannah around town. She barely acknowledged me. Days passed before I managed to receive more than a polite nod. Most people would have given up. I didn't. I noticed little things about her that others ignored. Every Saturday morning, she volunteered at the local animal shelter before anyone else arrived. She delivered groceries to an elderly veteran who lived alone. She quietly paid for coffee when college students came up short at the register. None of these acts were done for attention. In fact, she usually disappeared before anyone could thank her. Slowly, I realized something. The toughest person in town was also the kindest. One rainy afternoon, I found her changing a flat tire outside a grocery store. Instead of rushing over to impress her, I simply held an umbrella over both of us while she finished the job herself. She looked surprised, not because I had helped, but because I hadn't tried to take control. For the first time, she smiled. It lasted only a second, but it changed everything. Weeks passed, and our conversations slowly grew longer. They weren't romantic conversations. We talked about books, old country music, childhood memories, and our dreams of traveling across America someday. She laughed more often than anyone realized she could. One evening, she finally confessed why she kept people at a distance. Several years earlier, her fiancé had been killed by a drunk driver only 3 weeks before their wedding. The tragedy shattered her completely. Friends slowly disappeared because they didn't know what to say. Some encouraged her to move on before she was ready. Others stopped calling altogether. She built emotional walls because every person she had trusted eventually left. Listening to her story, I felt ashamed. Ashamed because my journey had started with a stupid bet. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I drove straight to Mason's house and handed him the $20 we had wagered. I told him I was done. He laughed at first, thinking I was joking. Then he saw my face. For the first time, he realized this wasn't about winning anymore. From that day forward, I never mentioned the bet again. Instead, I simply became someone Hannah could depend on. When storms damaged fences around her property, I helped repair them. When her elderly neighbor needed rides to medical appointments, I volunteered without being asked. During Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter, we spent time serving meals together at a homeless shelter in Nashville instead of chasing expensive vacations or fancy parties. Without realizing it, friendship quietly replaced competition. Months later, Hannah invited me on a hike through the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. We spent hours walking peaceful trails surrounded by towering trees and waterfalls. Somewhere along that trail, she admitted something that nearly stopped me in my tracks. She said she hadn't trusted anyone in years, but she trusted me. Those words meant more than any declaration of love ever could. Still, I carried a secret that haunted me every day. She didn't know how everything had begun. The guilt grew heavier with every passing week. Eventually, I realized that if I truly respected her, she deserved the truth, even if telling it meant losing her forever. So one quiet autumn afternoon, while sitting beside a peaceful lake covered in golden leaves, I confessed everything. I told her about Mason's challenge. I admitted accepting the bet. I explained how quickly the game had become meaningless after discovering the incredible woman she really was. I expected anger. I expected tears. I expected her to stand up and walk away forever. Instead, she remained completely silent. She stared across the water for what felt like hours. Finally, she stood, thanked me for telling the truth, and left without looking back. The following weeks became the longest of my life. She stopped answering messages. She avoided every place we normally visited together. Even Mason grew furious after learning what had happened. He blamed himself for starting the bet in the first place. I couldn't blame anyone except myself. Love built on hidden truths was never going to survive. Nearly a month later, there was a charity fundraiser at the community center. I volunteered anyway, assuming Hannah wouldn't come. Halfway through the evening, I looked up and saw her walking through the entrance. She wasn't smiling. She simply walked over and handed me a small envelope. Inside was the $20 bill from Mason's original bet. Attached to it was a handwritten note. It read that people make foolish decisions every day. What mattered wasn't how the story started. What mattered was who they chose to become before it ended. She wrote that I had earned her trust not because I was perfect, but because I chose honesty, even when it could cost me everything. At that moment, I realized forgiveness is one of the bravest forms of love. The following spring, surrounded by blooming wildflowers in a quiet park outside Franklin, I asked Hannah to marry me. There were no expensive fireworks, no dramatic audience, just two people who had survived heartbreak, mistakes, forgiveness, and healing together. She said yes. Years have passed since that unforgettable summer. The $20 bill still sits inside a small picture frame in our living room. Visitors often ask why we display such an ordinary piece of money. They never expect the story behind it. It reminds us every single day that genuine love isn't born from perfect beginnings. It grows through patience. It survives through honesty. And it flourishes because someone chooses grace over resentment. Mason eventually admitted losing that bet was the best thing that had ever happened to our family. He often jokes that it was the most expensive $20 he never actually got to keep. Today, whenever someone says first impressions define people forever, I quietly smile, because I once believed Hannah was impossible to know. She believed everyone eventually leaves. Both of us were completely wrong. Before we reach the end of this story, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment with the words "kindness always wins" if you believe honesty and forgiveness can change a person's life. As life continues to surprise us in ways we never expect, I hope this story reminds you that sometimes the greatest relationships begin in the worst possible circumstances. One honest decision can repair years of pain. One act of patience can soften the hardest heart. And one moment of forgiveness can rewrite an entire future. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing meaningful stories that inspire kindness, second chances, and faith in the goodness of people.